How does one get nicknamed the Tower? We're gonna learn all about that today. Hey, welcome to Lore Stories with Leila. I'm LeilaFox. Today's story is all about Roshcard the Tower. Roshcard the Tower is a legendary Sacred Order champ in Raid Shadow Legends. Now, when we look at the Sacred Order as a faction whole, for centuries, the Knights of the Sacred Order were charged with cleansing Teleria of evil in all its guises. But since the declaration of war, they have sworn allegiance to the Queen of Aravia. In league with the Queen's necromancer, these once holy knights now enforce Her Majesty's will and guard her chattel. So what we see with the Sacred Order faction is they very much remind me of paladins. They remind me of holy warriors. And you see that quite a bit, especially when you look at their design and you look at some of their abilities. So let's get into the lore story for Roshcard the Tower from the Telerian Lore Book of Champions. Nicknamed the Tower for his impressive height and his unyielding manner of defensive combat, Seneschal Roshcard is well known among the ranks of the Sacred Order and beyond. Despite his high rank, he can always be found spearheading attacks and facing the gravest of dangers alongside his brothers and sisters. One tale recounts Roshcard's heroic actions during the Siege of Dreadfang, an ancient room that had been turned into a mighty stronghold by a would-be vampire lord. Ignoring the odds, Roshcard set out with the vanguard of his army, personally leading the assault. When the siege towers finally broke through to the walls and the ramps crashed into the battlements, it was the Seneschal who charged headlong into the hordes of ghouls and skeletal warriors. None could stand before his might, and the undead have swept aside, tossed off the walls in droves with every swing of the holy warrior's hammer. It is said Roshcard's weapon emanated pure light when he met the vampire lord in single combat and laid him low. With their master banished, the undead creatures too collapsed and turned to dust. Roshcard was hailed as the champion of Lumea on that day, not only by the Templars he led, but also the local townsfolk who had suffered greatly at the vampire's hands. Some even say that is when his moniker was truly born, though there is no way to know for certain. Okay, wow, so that was the lore story for Roshcard the Tower, and there's definitely a couple things I really like about it. So for one, I like how they refer to him as a Seneschal Roshcard right in the beginning. And we look up what Seneschal means. There's quite a few different definitions of it, but the one that I think is very fitting is that the Seneschal is considered the chief officer and head of the army for a king or an emperor. And it seems like that fits Roshcard the Tower really well, because he talks about in his position of power and how he is in charge of the army, and even though where he is, he still can always be found fighting in the front lines and fighting with his brothers and sisters with the Sacred Order as a whole. Some other things I like about this story, and I think fits in really well with his abilities, is when we look at Roshcard's abilities in the game, I think it goes along nicely with the lore story, particularly some of these abilities, like we have his Zone of Protection, places a block damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. That seems like it fits in really, really well for a character like Roshcard, for a champion that looks like he's supposed to be like a holy paladin, protector type champion. And I love how, again, they take parts of the story and they add it into the ability. And even when we look at the way that he physically looks, he looks like that. He looks very tall, he looks very strong. And the tower nickname that they gave him, when they share into the lore how that became known, because he went in swinging and being able to knock enemies from all different sides. He pretty much was able to clear the battlefield on his own, is what they're saying, and be able to protect the army that he's with. So I really like how they kind of add all that in together. I think for myself personally, the Sacred Order is probably one of my favorite factions. And just like when we had looked at how the tower is physically designed, I love that. I think it looks really cool, and I really like the abilities that go along with it as well. And I would love to know what you think. Do you like the story for Roshcard the Tower? And who is your favorite champion in the Sacred Order faction? Hey, if you enjoyed this video, check out some more videos up here in the playlist on the top right.